Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for Honoring Black History. I'm Pam Moore. While February is Black History Month, Black history is American history, and it is being made every day of the year. In fact, that is the message Nicole Hannah-Jones has been pushing since she launched the 1619 Project at the New York Times in 2019. Her efforts helped inspire a curriculum that challenges teachers to rethink how we teach slavery. KRON4's Noel Bello talked to her about why these lessons should be taught beyond the month of February.
We can't understand the country that we are living in and the country that we're seeing with the history that we've been taught. It actually ill prepares us.
In an effort to force a reckoning and reframe American history lessons, New York Times journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones takes us back to the year 1619, a year most Americans are taught nothing about. The year 20 enslaved Africans were first sold on American soil.
You know, if you understand that slavery predates our country by 150 years, that changes how you think about that institution.
Following its first publications in 2019, the 1619 Project has blossomed now into a free curriculum created by the Pulitzer Center, and it's available as a lesson to be taught in schools across the country. Lessons I myself would have liked to learn as a young student.
Growing up, you learn about Martin Luther King Jr., the civil rights movement. There's almost a bit of a happy ending bow that's tied on the end of those types of lessons, and you lose so much of how it has impacted our lives beyond that.
There were 100 years between the end of slavery and Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King even lived 5 years after the I Have a Dream speech. We want to help fill in some of those gaps and lead students to start to read more and want to learn more so they can fill in those gaps themselves.
Hannah-Jones says she's a fan of Black History Month, but hopes these lessons are incorporated beyond just the month of February.
This is not just a story of Black people. If you want to understand the story of America, you have to understand the story of slavery and the legacy and the contributions of Black Americans. I think that you can't have empathy for the experiences of your fellow Americans if you don't understand why we live in the circumstances that we live in.
Noel Bello, KRON4 News.
San Francisco is now looking at plans to pay reparations to descendants of African slaves, and the next step in the process is forming an advisory committee. That committee will decide what reparations would look like, how much they would be, and who would qualify for the money. KRON4's Ellis Ogumonian reports.
The next step toward justice for African Americans in San Francisco has been taken. Applications are open for locals who are interested in advising a reparations committee to come up with a plan to pay residents directly or fund programs for those who are descendants of slaves. The president of the NAACP San Francisco chapter, Reverend Dr. Amos C. Brown, pushed for the funding, pointing to modern-day inequality and California's dark past.
Unless, as African Americans in the city of St. Francis, there is equality of opportunity, but we haven't had it. I know I haven't witnessed it in the 45 years I've been in this town. And before, as I cited historically, Peter Burnett was determined from the very beginning that we will be kept in a state of denial and not accepted as members of the human family.
He's referring to California Governor Peter Burnett, who in the 1850s tried to ban African Americans in the state. More than 170 years later, the San Francisco Human Rights Commission is now tasked with finding 15 people to fill vacant seats on a diverse advisory committee, each member representing a specific background. For example, one seat for a senior over 65 years old who has lived in a predominantly African American community, one for a formerly incarcerated individual, another for a formerly homeless person, and a small business owner principally serving the African American community, along with a former San Francisco resident who was pushed out because of gentrification.
It is going to be a hard conversation to have, and it's not going to make everybody happy, but I think it's great to be a part of a movement that is starting to actually do more than just talk about it, but actually dig down and potentially allocate some resources to address the harms that have been done over the years.
Davis says the San Francisco County Board of Supervisors has already allocated $100,000 for the advisory committee. A decision has yet to be made on where the money for the reparations will come from, Supervisor Shaman Walton had suggested using income from the city's marijuana taxes because Davis explains many Black community members were incarcerated over it.
That was Ella Sogamonian reporting. And although legally it cannot be required, both Reverend Brown and Davis agree the Black community can and should speak for itself. Well, most people are not accustomed to seeing a Black woman on a horse. It is a sight that gets a lot of attention. And East Bay native Brianna Noble is a 26-year-old equestrian and activist who uses that attention to promote causes that she cares about. She says horses inspire positivity. This picture of Brianna Noble on horseback leading a Black Lives Matter protest in Oakland went viral. Her intent to offset negative coverage of the demonstrations.
I just decided to take my personal horse to the protest and look at how far that spread around the world.
Later, she led a heels down, fists up Black Lives Matter trail ride demonstration in the Marin Headlands.
We're going to stand for 10 seconds of silence and solidarity with all the lives that have been senselessly lost.
Brianna fell in love with horses as a little girl, going with her sister to work at stables in Oakland.
I'd sweep the barn aisle, do whatever other chores around the ranch, and when it came time for her to ride, I would be peeking out the side of the barn door, and I just thought it was the coolest thing ever.
Her activism also started young, at 15, protesting the killing of Oscar Grant. But her dreams to continue with horse shows and jumping competitions has shifted. Now, instead, she has upped her efforts to expose more people of color, particularly children, to the equestrian life. She led me on a ride and talked about her nonprofit called Humble.
People that come from humble means are the ones that we want to impact, number one. And number two, horses are humbling. They humble you to their strength and their power. I humble myself to them, and in turn, they to me.
After working summers at a for-profit ranch, she decided to help low-income families.
It's just something that I did in my free time. That was my little way to give back.
Now her nonprofit, Humble, offers regular programs for underprivileged children, bringing them to serene settings like this at little or no cost.
For some of the parents of the kids, it's like this is the one time the kid will open up and talk.
I just really enjoy riding on the horses and also just feel like it's an opportunity to be riding on a horses that some people don't have.
At a certain point during our lessons, Bree allows them to take the initiative, and I do see that translating into our world at home.
What do you love about horses?
Everything. They are really the driving force in my life. They make me a better person.
Grounding and energizing. This is the Ride Out to Vote campaign. Brianna used her high profile to put together this video mirrored on the old Pony Express rides. And in real life, she rode her horse to turn in her own vote last November. Another chance to take her horses into the community for a cause.
I think it's the coolest thing in the world that I can figure out how to make a living and give back and be around horses all day. I mean, who doesn't want to basically turn their passion into a career, into a job, and into giving back?
And these are some of the children in Brianna Noble's Humble Horsemanship program. If you would like to learn more about it, we have a link on our website, KRON4.com, or visit mulattomeadows.com. Coming up, efforts to make Marin City a city. How members of the Black population there are working to make that happen. In the North Bay, Marin City sits in one of the richest counties in California. It is historically the home of the largest number of blacks in Marin County, yet despite its name, Marin City is not a city. It is an unincorporated area of Marin County, and I found out now many of its residents want that to change.
The county needs to take their knee off our necks and be able to give us what we deserve.
Majority of the county knows that Marin City has been ignored.
It's all about power and it's about control, right? We know right now that the county, they make decisions based on power that they know we don't have any control over.
Paul Austin and Damian Morgan are part of an effort to make Marin City a city. Money is key. They say, as an example, after Marin County last collected all the property and sales taxes from Marin City, The December 2020 allocation for services back to Marin City was just over $46,000. Arguably, to most county residents, Marin City is just a name on a freeway sign. But there is a rich history here. Marin City was created by the federal government during World War II for shipbuilding. People poured in for the jobs. War houses were built for them to live in. And a park, which is still here, with a mural that now documents the past. A past also kept alive in the memories of the families that were here from the beginning.
Founded Village Baptist.
Oh, okay.
My dad came from Lake Charles, Louisiana in 1941. He came out here to make a life.
I came from the South, from Louisiana. And Marin City just reminded me so much of the small town that I came from.
We had the old war houses up there. And when we lived up there, we just had all of the hillsides we could roam around on. My family, my uncle, my grandfather, my whole family, this is our family heritage.
Whites who came to Marin City for work moved out after World War II to other parts of Marin County in the Bay Area. Blacks did not have that luxury because of various racist housing restrictions, so they stayed and made Marin City their home. In fact, in 1960, 90% of the Marin City population was black. Those numbers have changed dramatically, and the black community feels it, making incorporation all the more important.
If we don't, it's going to be annexed by Sausalito eventually. If we don't get a hold of it, they're gonna take it over.
We don't get the resources that
we are concerned about that, definitely.
With incorporation, we get back it all, therefore we can do what we feel is best for our community.
I've always felt neglected from the county. Just sitting in meetings with my mom, always having to go to the table to ask for, resources to come back. It's just not fair. Incorporation would allow residents to elect their own leaders, run police and fire, capture property and sales taxes. The only business district is the Gateway Shopping Center, and this gallery is the only black-owned business. In Marin City, 4-generation black families are not uncommon, and they don't want their black history to be lost.
Marin City means everything to me.
Marin City has my heart, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that the folks here in Marin City have what they need.
Just over 3,000 people live in Marin City, considered the most diverse area in Marin County. The exploratory committee says the process to incorporate will likely take up to 2 years, and a key first step is educating the citizens about the value of living in a full-fledged city. The mortality rate of the COVID-19 virus among African Americans is 3 to 4 times higher than in the white community, but there is also a lot of mistrust for vaccines among black people. KRON4's Hazik Madyun talked with a black doctor with roots in the East Bay who volunteered for the vaccine clinical trial, and he is now reaching out to the black community about their concerns.
It is not the responsibility of those communities to develop trust of healthcare. It is responsibility of healthcare to earn that trust of those communities.
Dr. David Cook is head of thoracic surgery at UC Davis Health in Sacramento.
Basically, I operate anywhere between the neck and above the belly button, focusing primarily on the lung for lung cancer and the esophagus for esophageal cancer.
Dr. Cook was one of the volunteers for last summer's Pfizer COVID-19 clinical trial at UC Davis. He says he was motivated to take part in the trial when he saw a lack of black participants involved in the initial study.
And I saw that as a red flag. And the reason is that when you look at this COVID-19 virus pandemic, it is affecting everybody, but especially our communities of color, our Black African-American communities, Latino communities, indigenous peoples, in regards to mortality.
He says after receiving the 2 shots, he experienced some minor discomfort in his arm and a slight headache. Symptoms, he says, are common regardless of race.
So white, non-Hispanic, Hispanic, Black, African-American, male, female, those side effects were evenly distributed across demographics.
That said, this proud Oakland native, graduate of Skyline High School, UC Berkeley, and Harvard Medical School, says he understands the role U.S. history plays in the reluctance to get vaccinated by some members in the African American community.
And that mistrust is warranted. And that's because of historical assaults on the Black African American community, whether it's the Tuskegee syphilis trial, but also current structural racism in healthcare.
According to a recent Kaiser Family Foundation study, which lists percentages of groups that are the most COVID-19 vaccine hesitant, African Americans are not alone. As you can see here, distrust for the vaccine exists in just about every community. However, Dr. Cook wants people of color to know that his trust in the COVID-19 vaccine is based on the science, data, participating in a clinical trial conducted by his colleagues whom he trusts at UC Davis, and by ultimately stepping up to be a volunteer to test the vaccine.
In order to dispel that mistrust, I needed to pace set and serve as an example and volunteer myself for that trial. Because the only way to really mitigate the disproportionate effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on our underserved communities is not the only way, but one of the many ways is to vaccinate.
Hazik Madyoun, KRON4 News.
Still ahead, Black entrepreneurs in the Bay Area paving the way for generations to come. How two local business owners are using fashion to make a statement. In 1971, the first Black-owned business hit the stock markets, introducing the world to Joan and George Johnson's hair care company, Johnson Products. Since then, African Americans have played a profound role in shaping the American business landscape. And as KRON4's Noel Bello reports, the fashion industry is bursting at the seams with Black influence.
Exploding down runways, in stores, and in magazines, Black culture is becoming more sought after in the fashion world. Here in the Bay Area, Black entrepreneurs like Bay Area rapper Mr. Fab are finding new ways to share their artistic expression as fashion designers.
The biggest message is the inspiration that you can do it. The reasons why none of us ever go after some of our goals is because we don't realistically think that they're possible. So to be living proof that it is possible, I hope that it inspires others to continue to keep going after their goals and not taking no for an answer.
Fab opened his clothing store Dope Era in 2018, and it's now become a staple in downtown Oakland. He says Dope Era hasn't always been a positive term, but he chose the name for his line as a way to illustrate how the community has evolved.
When we were growing up, the Dope Era wasn't always a positive thing. It was actually at times that we were living in that were the streets were flooded with drugs, and there were a lot of violence and a lot of crime. And I learned to look at things and try to find a silver lining, and in seeking and searching for a silver lining in that name. So we created an acronym for it, and it stands for Developing Opportunity for People to Evolve. And when you do so, everyone rises above.
Just across the bay is another rising fashion star, self-proclaimed serial entrepreneur Noelle Bonner. Her new e-commerce consignment store, The Nobo, lets lovers of high-end fashion trade and sell their merchandise. It launched online February 1st.
It's exciting to have launched on February 1st, the first day of Black History Month.
Bonner says The Nobo looks to give people a way to really get their money's worth when it comes to their more expensive items.
You know, through consignment, whether it's online or through more the retail channels for consignment, you can traditionally lose quite a bit of the values. This is really a unique opportunity that people need to get educated about because it doesn't exist in the market, but it poses a real, a unique opportunity for them to kind of start exploring.
Between Mr. Fab's brick and mortar store and Noelle Bonner's e-commerce platform, the future is looking bright for Black entrepreneurship and fashion.
For me, Black people are making history all the time, not just in February, but all the time.
Noel Bello, KRON4 News.
Next up, two local hip-hop legends come together to represent the Bay Area and beyond. How E40 and Too Short are leaving their mark on history.
You from the 415, you from the 510, you from the 707, 408, or the 650.
You're listening to one of the latest tracks titled Oaklandish from Bay Area hip-hop artist Too Short that can be found on a bundle album with another legend, E40. That dropped just a few weeks ago. The video features some classic sights from across the Bay Area, and we do want to hear from the minds behind the music, Mr. E40 and Too Short themselves, joining us right here on KRON4. Thank you so much for your time.
What's up? What's up? How you doing?
Fantastic. Now that you're here, we needed some of that positivity. This isn't your first collaboration in an industry where competition is fierce, to say the least. What is the key to your continued success in working together?
I would say just, being cut from a certain cloth. We cut from the old school. It's like teamwork make the dream work. This the big bro right here, he never did nothing foul in the game in my eyes, and I'm sure it's likewise on his behalf. And we every time we get together, we make hit records. We make classic records, albums, and we've been rocking since the '80s.
Well, E40, I also know that you have a bit of a culinary experience behind you, so definitely a recipe for success there. And it looks like nothing can stop the force that is the Bay Area hip hop, not even a pandemic. Again, we certainly need that positivity in these tough times. So tell me, what keeps you two going?
What keeps us going is the Bay Area, the fans, the love that from day one that we've always gotten. It's like at a certain point, you would think that a recording artist, does the course and you get older and you retire. There is no older retirement with Too Short and E40 in the Bay Area. We just keep doing this. We just had a great successful Apple Music versus that we did that the whole Bay Area watched, and it just shows the love,
And that wraps up our special. I'm Pam Moore. Thank you for joining us here on KRON4 for Honoring Black History.